All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Um, we are going to be having Tanya Hardy and Ashton Bokenfour giving a presentation to share with everyone today, talking about class management strategies. Tanya, Ashton, and myself, we've been working together to create this, series of, coach education and webinars. What we're planning to do, as we are all from Alberta, is sharing information and with all of our friends in BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and beyond, find that we can share and be able to make it so that these resources can get passed along, and it's going to be recorded so we can check it out after the fact, or if you ever want to reference back, then we can do that. So yeah, in terms of housekeeping for today, if you have any questions, then you can either use the raise hand feature or you can type something in the chat. I'm going to be kind of watching both of those things as we go through, and then Tanya and Ashton, I'll kind of just, when it's appropriate, I'll pause and we can address that question and then move on. As I said, near the tail end of the session, we're going to have a breakout room session where our big group, we're going to go into smaller breakout rooms and do a little bit of practical exercise. And then afterwards, we're going to come back and have a small discussion and review, and then we should be done at the hour. So without further ado, I'm going to let Tanya and Ashton introduce themselves, and then we can go from there.
Thank you, Bobby. So I'm Tanya Harty. Just a little background about myself. I've been in the gymnastics world for over 15 years, coaching and stuff like that. My background is a special needs teacher, so I have kind of lots of experience with class management and stuff like that. So yeah, me and Ashton work together on developing this presentation for you guys to bring back to your club and your classes. And if you have questions, feel free to jump in, or other strategies that we may have listed, just kind of pop in and let us know. I'm hoping to compile this at the very end that we can email out to all you guys, so you can have a resource to bring back to your club and coaches. So yeah, Ashton, do you want to do a quick intro of yourself?
Oh yeah, sorry. My name's Ashton. I've been working with classes with kids with special needs for quite a while now. I'm also a respite worker and an EA in schools. So see a lot of that in schools as well and outside of schools. I've been coaching gymnastics for I think it's come up to 9 years now. So, and I tried to start a program at YAG Gymnastics, which was a class that just was for working with kids with special needs. So yeah, that's kind of my background, I guess.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see the PowerPoint, and then just let me know that you guys can see it when I pops up.
Yeah, we can see, and it looks full screen, so that's perfect. So
Awesome.
Whenever you two are ready, just go right ahead.
Okay, as we said, we're going to talk about class management. So when you're looking at class management, one of the things that you kind of should think about before dealing with a kid is why would a participant misbehave? So with that, there's a couple things that you can think about is the media. So what are they watching on TV or watching in movies? I know a lot of things today are very violent oriented, especially if you think of the Marvel comics that are out, like Spider-Man and stuff like that. So that could play a role of why an individual may misbehave. Their home environment. So you don't know necessarily what kind of environment they're coming from. Are they having trouble at home? Do they have, is a parent not there, working lots, or maybe a parent passed away? Maybe a new sibling has entered the home. Another thing is even just looking at hey, did they have a meal before they came to class? That way. So always think of the home environment, school environment. There may be issues there. They might be struggling in school academically, socially, even just with their teachers. Social recognition and self-esteem. So with this, there's kind of a couple behavior disruptions that you can look for. Is it that they are wanting to get attention getter? So the behavior they're doing is for attention. They're power seeking over you, and they're revenge seeking. And another one is look at cognitive development. So is there a disability? Like, do they have autism or Down syndrome or something like that? Is there that underlying disability there that is causing them to misbehave?
Okay, types of interruptions. So kids could be talking in class, humming, laughing, calling out, or whispering. There could be off-task behaviors, so daydreaming, sleeping, playing with something. And disruptive physical movement, so visiting, running off, and throwing things. So seeing how you can minimize those interruptions. It's okay to like play with something. Like I know I give my classes lots of poppers, like fidget toys, as long as they're still paying attention.
So what we're going to get into now is what, as a coach, you can do to prep for these behaviors that may come up and manage your class better. So what can you do as a coach? So the first thing is pre-planning. So making sure you have like your lesson plans in place and pre-thinking. We're going to look at strategies to use during the class. We're going to also look at strategies during transitions between stations, because sometimes you may lose attention of a child or participant, an adult, during that transition. You're going to look at strategies to use during explanation. So when you're demonstrating and talking about the stations that you're going to do, and then specific station strategies we'll look at.
Okay, pre-planning. Be prepared to coach. Clear explanations are given. Ensure participants understand thumbs up, down, and directly ask, etc. Enforce behavioral expectations. Be enthusiastic and encouraging. Model appropriate behavior. Build positive and trusting relationships, and coach proximity in the class. Never want a big class.
So as a coach, like as I kind of said before, like being prepared to coach. So like having your lesson plan, knowing your kids. I know a lot of clubs, they ask on the registration forms if there's any medical issues that they may know. So if you do have a class that is special needs, understanding their disabilities and prepping for that is really good. Yeah. So now we're going to get into strategies. For strategies for transition between stations. So when you're transitioning between stations, there's a variety of activities you can do with them to make it fun and to keep them engaged and focused during that transition. You don't want them just wandering, not paying attention, talking to their peers, especially for safety of them. So one of the ideas that I've done in the past is like hula hoop walks. So having each person walk with a hula hoop, or they can hold hula hoops as they walk. The line ropes for the really little kids, I found this works really nicely to get them to walk with a line rope. Special helper of the day, line leader of the day. This is always exciting, especially if kids fight to be in line. I always assign them a specific day that they can be the line leader. I've even had kids in the past, which is funny. They all wanted to be the caboose. They all wanted to be the end of the line, not the front of the line. So there's that kind of thing you can adapt with as you go. Different ways to walk. So with the younger kids, participants, you can have them like walk like frogs, or walk tall like a giraffe, or pick your favorite animal, walk like zombies. So many different ways you can do that. Racing. So I've done this with a little bit older kids and adults, is like have them race to a different station, see how fast they can go. Sometimes I've timed it. I've also done with the racing kind of thing is like, okay, you have to get from bars to trampoline, but you can't touch anything blue. So it creates almost a little bit obstacle course that way. I know sometimes depending on how busy your gym is, these are a little bit more challenging, but if it's something you can pre-plan, pre-set up, it's a good way to get them to transition.
Strategies to use when explaining activities. So stickers and tokens, check marks. Again, sitting in the squares or the circles, they could bring their hula hoops with them. Stuffed animals, toys to hold, wiggle cushions, funny ways to watch, having them demonstrate, and changing your voice. That's one that I like to use a lot, is to change my voice.
And just to point out, Ashton mentioned this a little bit earlier too. When you give them like a stuffy or a wiggle cushion or something to hold, you always have to be aware of it being more of a distraction versus like a fidget toy or something that they can focus on. So being able to like assess the child that or individual that you're working with to be able to hold it and what they're doing with it. If they're distracting the other kids, then it's something that you may have to remove and come up with another idea to do it. So to continue on with explaining activities, so if you're trying to explain an activity in your circuit to the participants and you have somebody that's talking or not paying attention to you, there's a couple things that you can do as a coach without kind of disrupting the whole class. So some of the strategies that I've done and we've talked about is like you make eye contact. So while you're addressing the whole class, you specifically look at that individual, make eye contact with them so that they're aware of that you do notice them. You can move closer to them. So just changing your position within the class. You can lightly tap them on the arm or the shoulder. Sometimes that will just kind of redirect them back to what you're trying to tell them. Say the individual's name during explanation. So for example, I say today on bars, John, we are going to learn to do a pullover. So I'm not stopping my explanation of what we're doing. I'm just kind of adding their name in there. So it's kind of brings them back and stresses that I'm aware of what they're doing. Ask them a question. So if you are doing pullovers on bars, be like, John, do you remember what the first step in is a pullover is? And getting them to kind of think about what they're doing and what you're trying to explain to them. You can shake your head at them. So making that eye contact and just kind of lightly shaking your head. And then if they are kind of more disruptive, make that eye contact and then point to another area that you would like them to move in. And like, as I said before, these are kind of all done without stopping the class. You kind of do them within still explaining. So you're not taking away the time to focus on that one kid until you absolutely have to.
Strategies to use during circuits. Attention getters. So clapping your hands in patterns and the kids repeat. Holy moly, guacamole, all set, you bet. Macaroni and cheese, everyone freeze. Freeze. Oh, hands on head, countdown timer. And whispering, if you can hear me, touch your head or touch your nose.
So I have a little video kind of demonstrating some of these. I think the individual in this video does a little bit more, but these are always really fun for participants to do. So quickly click over to the video.
We're about to teach you a tool that is essential for fun, effective group management. I'm talking about the attention getter. These are used to get groups to stop what they're doing and focus. I'm gonna let my good friend, Coach Sean, show you how it works in action.
If you need my voice, clap twice, clap once, clap 0 times. All right, if you need my voice, match me, match me, match me. Hands on top.
Now we stop.
If you need my voice, show me your waterfall fingers. Bum, bada, bum, bum.
Bum, bum.
Alligator, alligator. You need my boys, put a bubble in your mouth. And a hush went over the crowd.
So those are fun attention getters that you can do with your participants. So to continue on with strategies to use during circuits. So if you have a participant that gets distracted, so if they're actually doing the circuit, doing all the skills and the drills that you've demonstrated them to do, there's a couple things that you can work on during the circuit to help bring them back. So shorten the circuit time. So I know a lot of clubs have rotations for 15, usually about 15 minutes. And I know depending on how busy your clubs and how you actually run it, if you do your circuit switches as a whole club or more as individual classes, you can try to shorten it. So doing like 8-minute rotations or 10-minute rotations instead is something to look at. Also with shortened circuit times, you can also shorten the circuits. So sometimes I find that if I have 10 kids in my class, but I only have 4 stations, they might get bored and distracted and want to goof off more because they're not constantly being busy doing the skills. And then also the reverse can happen too, where you have 10 circuits and stations within a circuit, but you have maybe 2 or 3 kids and they're racing through it. So now that they're kind of bored because they've done it 100 times. So kind of looking at a variety of that. I always say at least a minimum 1 station per kid is kind of what I always like to do as a coach. Also, you can, if you find that the kid participants are getting distracted, you can stop and play a skill learning game. The little kids, I usually play scat with them. So scat is where I say, okay, go scat, which means they go find a place to hide. And it's usually at the circuit we're at. And then when I clap my hands, they come back to me. When they do come back to me, we look at a skill. So I may be like, okay, show me a straddle sit or show me a star jump. You can incorporate that with the older group too, where you might play like a Simon Says game where you ask them, like Simon Says, do a tuck jump, or Simon Says, show off your cartwheel kind of thing. So it's always fun to do that. Take a little bit of break from the circuit. The younger participants do a shake your sillies out break, be it to turn on the song or just kind of have everybody stop, freeze, and do a little shake and silly dance. Another one is remove the distractions. So if there is a distraction that is enticing for your participants, so if they're constantly leaving the circuit to go to that distraction, you can remove it or move yourself away from it, or provide, like, for example, like if you have a barrel in the next station and the individual keeps running over there to play, maybe moving that barrel out of their line of sight so they can't reach it. If it's more something like that you can't move, for example, like a foam pit or a trampoline, that could be something that you can do. Like if you can't move stations, you as a coach stand kind of in front of it, create that barrier wall so that maybe it prevents the individual from being distracted there, but then also you can also guide them back better, but you're still facing the station and all the kids. And then the last one is most important, is making it fun for the participants. So as long as the kids and all the participants are having fun, then they shouldn't be maybe necessarily distractions there. But you also can incorporate funny things for them to do. So if you're looking at, they're going through the circuit, maybe they can be different characters in a circuit, like little kids can be minions. For the older kids I've done, and adults I've done, where they work, say if it's a 15-minute station, the first 10 minutes they're working on the skills, And then they're going to present a skill that they worked on for the last 5 minutes at that station. So they have that end goal that they can focus on to keep them engaged during that circuit.
Okay, class strategies. Review rules with class, beginning of the class and throughout the class. So making sure that the kids know the rules, or sorry, the participants know the rules of the gym or the building that they're using. Timeouts, that's more for the younger participants. Encouraging appropriate behavior, planned ignoring, peer praise, focus class attention on appropriate behavior. So if a participant is being really good and listening and doing their stations, making sure that you give them that extra praise almost. iMessages, if possible, have a CIT or floater coach. I think that is very important if you do have some difficult participants to have that extra support in your gym or on the side, someone that can come and help you if need.
And just to go back to iMessages, just in case some coaches don't know what an iMessage is. So you're focusing on like, for example, I would say to an individual, I'm scared that if you do not know what you're doing, you're going to hurt yourself, right? Like, so it's addressing like that feeling there, then just focusing on like, don't stop, don't do that kind of thing. So just rewarding how you approach the kid about that. So when we're having to discipline an individual, you always want to talk to the individual privately. I find that you don't want to call them out in front of the rest of the class. It's just taking them, like, maybe you can start the circuit and then ask, hey, be like, Johnny, can you come over here? We have a quick moment, and then just chat with them on the side. You want to make sure that it's a brief conversation, especially like looking at the individual's age. Like if you're talking to a 3-year-old, going on a 10-minute talk with them is not appropriate. You're going to lose them within the first couple sentences. So making it brief and to the point. You want to speak to the situation, not the person. So for example, you don't want, like, you want to, and so instead of saying like, you interrupted me, you are rude, be like, interrupting me is rude kind of thing. So you're not putting that behavior actually on the individual. Again, talk to the behavior, not the feelings. For example, I understand you're mad, but it's not okay to hit. And then redirecting them that way. You want to avoid sarcasm. And then any situation, I said, if it's concerning a repeated behavior, to always follow up with the parent. I believe that no matter what, if you have an individual in your class that you have to talk to, you should always let the parent know that you are addressing that behavior in the class so that they're aware of it. Parents know their kid the best, so they might actually be able to help you in that situation too. All right, so now this is where we're going to do our breakout rooms. Does anybody have questions, sorry, up to this point? I know we kind of ran through it and provided different strategies. I only see part of you guys, so hopefully there was no questions. So we'll do breakout rooms now, where you guys will go into groups and we'll assign you a scenario. And then we'll discuss the scenario within your groups, come up with some strategies, and then we'll bring it back to the whole group. So you may want to assign 1 or 2 people in your group to be the talkers once we bring it back, so that we can kind of have a full group discussion that way.
Cool. So while we're doing this, so Tanya, is it possible for like each of our groups to be able to get their, I guess, a copy of their scenario or something of the sort? Because when we go into breakout room, I don't know if they'll be able to.
What I can do, hopefully this will work. I'll copy and paste it into chat. If I do it in the regular chat, will they be able? I'm assuming all the groups will be able to see it.
Yeah. If you do it in the regular chat now, yeah, then they will be.
So we'll do that. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll copy and paste it into the chat then and you guys can pull from the group. So for example, if you're breakout room 1, you're gonna do scenario 1, 2, so on and so forth.
Sweet. Sounds good. I'm just in the process right now of
Yeah, no
building
worries.
our rooms. While I'm doing this, does anyone have any questions for Tanya or Ashton? Or does anyone have any specific scenarios that they might have experienced in their own clubs or in their own classes that they maybe want to talk about? Or maybe they have questions about maybe a specific scenario that they've had to deal with and maybe it was challenging in some ways. I need to give that a thought while I am building this out. No? Cool. So everyone just take a note of the chat to make sure that you can, just be able to recall the scenarios that we have. I'm just about done building out our rooms.
And just to let you know, when it copied into the chat, the numbers weren't beside it. So just be aware that each paragraph is a separate scenario.
Okay,
I don't know why that didn't get included when I copied and pasted it. So
cool. Wait, I figured it out. So I am going to let us go. We have our 4 rooms. So if you are in room 1, you're going to do scenario 1, room 2, scenario 2, room 3, scenario 3, and room 4, scenario 4. So let's give this a go, see how this works. Okay. And Hi, everyone. So hopefully you're able to pull the scenarios from the chat. Tanya, did you send it to everyone in the chat or?
I did. I sent one. I actually sent it just to you and then I sent it to everyone. So
Okay.
hopefully everyone can.
So each paragraph is each scenario.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we have Danielle, Megan, Cassidy, and Tanya. So you 4 are here. I'm going to hop into the other rooms and just make sure that they're good and we'll go from there. Cool.
Thanks.
5 minutes at the end of the day to do the couple minutes of foam pit at the end.
How's it going, everyone? Were you all good with our scenarios?
Yep.
Sweet, just working through it?
Yep.
Cool. All right, I'll let you go. I'm just going to be kind of bouncing around.
Does anybody else have?
For us, usually when we have somebody that's either having a little bit of extra or is having some problems in class, rather.
Okay. What are some strategies you can use to help motivate the child to join in? How can talking with mom about a pre-plan help to prevent this in future classes?
Yeah, it's fun.
Just eat your snack.
Yeah.
Finishes his snack before he joins. Yeah, that's a good one. I would also say if he needs, I mean, I would say for if I had that situation happen to me, I would suggest that he could sit down on a bench
Okay, so I think that everyone is back now, so that's excellent. How did the breakout rooms go? I was kind of bouncing around from room to room, so I only heard snippets of each conversation, but from the snippets I did hear, it sounded like everything was going well. So I really hope that's the case. Okay, with everyone being back now, let's just go through each of the scenarios. What I'll do is I'll just read out the scenario so that nobody else has to, but everyone has the context. And then one person who I hope that from each group that we've are assigned can talk about some of the solutions to that scenario. So we're going to go with group one first. So you have an individual who is on the autism spectrum and is having a hard time sitting and paying attention to you when you are demonstrating a circuit. What can you do to help this individual and also not take away from the class? So the speaker from group one, I'll let you go first. And then if we want to have any additional discussions, then we can maybe do that. Okay, so I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, so the solutions we came up with were using your extra coach, using a kid as an example. If they can't manage to sit still, maybe use them to show what they're supposed to be doing at each station. Do the stations all together one at a time, and then they can separate afterwards. Using colored circles or hoops or polka dots for a place for the kids to stand and sit down to be able to listen, to have a space. And then there's also a comment made that kids don't maybe always have to be watching, necessarily paying attention to what you're listening, and that you can kind of keep an eye. Sometimes kids on the spectrum will look around everywhere, but they'll still be listening and being able to do the stations properly. So maybe try giving it a try to see if they are actually listening and just pay attention.
Great. Thank you for sharing. That's excellent. Does anyone have any other things that they would maybe add to that, or have any other feedback that they think that they want to share? No? Okay, cool. Let's go to scenario number 2. So team 2, you're going to be up. So in this scenario, you have an individual who is constantly running to the foam pit and jumping in. What are some strategies that you can do to help them stay with the class and not run away from you jumping in the pit?
So we said to get some foam blocks involved into the circuit that you're doing. So you could bring the foam pit kind of to them. If you have foam pit later on in the class, you can let them know that if they stay with the class for now, then we'll get to do foam pit later on, or like using it as an incentive. If you can find a couple minutes to go into the foam pit at the end of the day and let them know that that's coming up later, might be helpful.
Love that. That's awesome. Just redirecting the focus and energy and kind of dangling that carrot of like, if you're behaving, then we can have that fun later. It's not to say you won't have it today. It's just not at this moment. That's awesome. Love that. Anything to add? Anyone? No? Okay, cool. All good. All right, scenario 3. So during warm-up, one of your participants is having a hard time focusing and keeps on interrupting you when you're giving instruction. Once the warm-up game starts, this participant continues to disrupt the class. What do? How can you pre-plan so that this doesn't happen again?
Okay, so for this one, the most ideal situation would be to have an extra help, to have a CIT or to have an extra coach. But if that's not the case, then what we were saying is to have the athlete help demonstrate in the warm-up. So having them demonstrate and show, or having them tell the kids what the warm-up is. So then that way they get to be involved, and like their disruption then becomes more productive in the stations. And then if that doesn't work, also doing side stations for them so that they can be over there, do what they need to do while the class still gets to do what you are teaching them. And then our last resort would be getting the parent involved, having them come in, sit down and watch and just be there as support, not actually in the class, but just in the facility so that the student knows that they have that extra support. Yeah, that's it.
Love that. Great suggestions.
Something
Anything
to
to add?
add on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Go now.
Yeah, so for the parent thing, like, yeah, definitely using them as the last resort. But I know that, like, coming back from like everything that we've gone through, kids are a lot more nervous to even just join in on classes. So I have found that it's okay, like, for those littler classes to have that parent come onto the floor, and then eventually, like, they can gradually back up and sit in the viewing area. So that does work as well, because it is hard for kids. They're not used to sitting in a group of kids. So
Yeah.
Great points. I think the big thing too, as we're kind of coming out of, well, we're still in COVID, but coming out of COVID, our job is to make it so we can have a positive participant experience, right? So if that one individual needs to maybe have someone with them, just to make it so that they're comfortable, so that they can find success in the class. I know that when it came to the discussions, this was like a year ago or maybe even longer, when we're talking about like parent and taught classes, talking about like generally in the past, maybe clubs would only have it so that they'd only up to about 4 years old. But maybe now, and even in specific scenarios, it doesn't really matter because age is in a way just kind of a number, but the participants' cognitive and social development and everything like that is kind of the bigger measure of what they'll need. So they might be 6 years old. It doesn't mean that they have to be in a non-parenting class, right? Because for maybe the skill development and the age of the participants they're going to be with, that's where they should be. But they might just need a little bit of help, and it might only be for a few classes. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Anything
And
else to add? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, to lead off on kind of what exactly you just said, is that I think we, especially working even like between kids and teenagers, because of what we've been going through, they have that social anxiety now because they're trying to navigate too, from being on lockdown to now coming out and being able to participate in sports and stuff like that. So it's being aware of that. This is, you were kind of saying too. So having that gentle parent there, or gentle introduction to the class, is kind of important to think about too, just because of what we've gone through the past 2 years and thinking of their mental health kind of thing. So yeah.
Love that. Okay, excellent. We're going to move to our last one just to make sure we have enough time. So number 4. So we have a participant in one of our classes who just doesn't want to join the class. The parent informs after that the participant is upset because they never got to finish their snack. What are some strategies that we can use to help motivate the participant to join in? How can we talk with their parent about a pre-plan to make sure that we can prevent these type of disruptions from happening in future classes? So group 4, I'll let you go ahead on this one.
So first off, you could alter the snack, like the snack time or the snack substance, so that they can actually finish either before the class or whenever that snack is. Don't give them crazy big snack or snacks that take a long time to eat. Anything else?
I think that's all we talked about in the way of the snack scenario. I know we were also talking about when they're nervous to join the class, giving them a stuffy, or I think we mentioned Brave Bear, right? Giving them that Brave Bear and saying, hey, can you help Brave Bear? Can you show him how we do gymnastics in our gym? Can you be his helper? And kind of coaxing them in that way.
One other strategy I found is I had somewhat of a similar situation. A kid was very upset because they were late to a class, and they just refused to join because of that. And I found that specifically talking to that kid and finding out what interests them, in this case, it was Mario. So I tried to frame the circuit as a Mario themed level so that they would be interested in perhaps joining in.
Good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good one. I like the Brave Bear. That's a neat one.
I joined that breakout room as they were discussing Brave Bear, and I think that that is something maybe like even for me myself that I would take away from this entire session is having some sort of mascot or symbol within the club that in special occasions when needed we can break that tool out to make it so that the participant can feel that they're not necessarily alone per se. So having the Brave Bear, and then you get to have Brave Bear with you for the class until you feel that you're good, that Brave Bear can go back to his cave or wherever dwelling that they live in. Tools like that are really creative, and I like that. And again, with Jackson's suggestion too, getting to know your participants and then trying to entice them with something that's not going to be much more legwork for you as a coach, but just something, again, just using your imagination to have fun with it so that they can participate. That's really cool. I like that. That's very quick on your feet. So I commend you for that, Jackson. That's great.
That's really good.
Any other suggestions or things of the sort like that? I know that Nancy was saying, just suggest that he finish his snack before he joins the class, or ask really, and I think it is a conversation with the parent of like asking the parent to pre-plan to have their snack much earlier so we don't have snack disruptions like at the gym. But you know what? Sometimes life happens and parents or participants or even coaches get busy and these kind of things come up. But the way that we can react to it, I think, is a much more important measure of your coaching capacity rather than the fact that something happened. Because whether you can plan for everything, things happen. That's life.
Yeah, and like it might come to a point where that kid is just so focused on finishing that snack or that participant that they might just unfortunately not be able to do the class. Like I have also had that happen. Like it could throw off their entire day, and it might not just be about the snack. It might be something else as well building up to the snack. So
absolutely. It's like what we were talking about earlier too at the start with the theory, in terms of sometimes there's other factors that you as a coach may never have been aware of, or maybe you're not in like privy to that information, whether they have other stressors or maybe their home life or school or whatever it is. So I guess the gist of it is just making sure, like as a coach, there's no need to get too frustrated about it, but just making sure that you have open heart, an open mind, and just understanding like, hey, like we're here to have fun and have a positive experience. And some days, some participants are just not having it. And then I've had it too, even in some of my classes where mom's just like, nope, gym is not happening this week. We'll try again next week. And that's okay. That happens sometimes. Like, it's just, you have to weigh out like, and it's kind of more the parent, but just don't think as a coach that you haven't done your job, because sometimes it's out of your control.
Exactly. You don't want to have to force it like as a coach. Of course, it's the parent's decision. But even relaying that to the parent, be like, if you find that it's gotten too stressful and the kid's really stressed, the parents are in stress and it's just not there, maybe suggesting the parents, hey, like, what about we try for next week? Like, that's okay too to suggest, because you don't want to make it unfun for them. You want them to come back, right? As Bobby was saying, you want it a good experience for them. So, yeah.
Great. So we've got about 7 minutes left in our scheduled time for this afternoon. Does anybody else have any other questions or potential scenarios that they wanted to chat about or ask questions about while we have Tanya and Ashton here? To give everyone a little bit of a preface in terms of kind of what's to come. So Tanya and Ashton, their area of expertise, of course, along with gymnastics, is working with participants with special or adaptive needs. And our plan is, with this being the initial introduction, I guess, to this series, what we want to do is we want to have more specific sessions in the future for working with, let's say, a participant with autism or a participant with Down syndrome, to provide more specific coach education so that when a club encounters a participant with one of these disabilities, that they would be more equipped to better, I guess, cater to that participant so that they can have a good experience. In conjunction with that, with those kind of theoretical sessions, we're looking to also do some in-person sessions too. Of course, we're in Alberta, so those will be happening in Alberta, but if anyone from BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba is just passing through and it just so happens to be on the same time, of course, you're more than welcome to join in as well. But that's kind of the plan to the future for what we want to build towards as we're going like kind of through the summer and into next season. All right, so I have a question here from Kiana in the chat. So I have groups of kids that always break into games of tag in the middle of class. Any advice? Oof, that sounds like a good one. I'll let the room kind of take that one in, and Tanya and Ashton, feel free to jump in, and then we can go from there.
You know what? I can't say I've ever had that happen. So that is a good one. I would say maybe like addressing that at the beginning, and saying, okay, like we'll play a game of tag at the end if we can all do our circuits and focus and, you know, learn like whatever activity we are doing. So that would be my advice there. Like just shutting it down right away and using it as something to work towards.
Yeah, that's what I would do too. Like, have it as a motivator. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. I just got kicked out because my internet's unstable right now. It says so.
You're clear. You're all good.
Okay, good. Yeah, so that's what I would do too. Is kind of because they love the idea of tag. Okay, we'll use it as a reward or incorporate it with skills too. Like play a tag game, but when they freeze, they have to demonstrate a static movement or a locomotion, some kind of way, right? Like especially on floor, you can kind of do it that way, incorporate into class or use it as that motivator as a reward. Does anybody have any other suggestions or have dealt with this in their classes?
Yeah, actually for us too, we have our boys classes on Saturday. There's one class where the boys just have a lot of energy, so they're just running around all the time. So what we normally do is we'll use it as like a motivator for the end. So if you guys can get through this circuit, at the end, we're gonna do like 10 minutes where you guys can literally just run around on the floor and do whatever you want. But also with it being like getting energy out, we usually get them to help set up the circuit or put away the circuit or decide maybe what they want to do in the circuit. And that way some of that energy is being let out.
Mm-hmm.
A good comment too that Marilee was saying is it sounds like they may need to be busier. Like, does this happen at like a certain event? The Kiana saying no, just whenever they're in the gym. So it happens at all the events. From my experience too, something that I know helps working, and again, this can be anyone really, is if you have the type of participants that are maybe a bit more competitive, if you can make whatever activity you're doing a competition of some sort with really no prizes aside from maybe a high five, then that always helps too. Like who can hold their chin up hold the longest, who can do the smoothest forward roll down the cheese mat, who can walk across the beam and do the highest kicks. And it doesn't really matter about who's the best or who's the winner, but more so giving them something to refocus their energy towards. Ashton just commenting as well, like for your boys, if you're on the beam, try to get them running back and forth on the beam safely. So yeah, and you can do that on a line, low beam, be careful with medium or higher beams, but yeah, definitely make sure it's appropriate to their ability levels. Great question though, great feedback, everyone. Okay, we got time for about probably, I'd say one more question if anyone else has one.
I have one question. We have one athlete that was having a lot of trouble in class. So we contacted her parent because we had 2 or 3 people on that class and it still wasn't helping. So we contacted her parent, we got her to come in, but it seems like the parent being in the facility is almost making it worse. So now how do we transition back and what can we do to help her be more successful in class?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because sometimes, yeah, parents, they know their kid the best, but sometimes that can be more of a distraction during the class than anything. I would say like just talk to the parent about it and be like, okay, we tried this for a couple of weeks. Now I have other suggestions of and so that the parent can step back, but they can maybe still be in the facility that way. Cause I don't know what your policy is. Cause you said you called them in. Sorry, you were saying that they're distracted during class. I'm just trying to remember the beginning of the scenario.
Yeah, they're distracted, they're running around, they're not paying attention, just overall can't really be in class and be focused.
Okay. So yeah, like a bunch of the strategies we talked about today, like using markers are really good to see if that will help them focus. Getting them as demonstrators is really good. if you have that conversation with that individual about their interest, maybe incorporating that into them to get them motivated to want to pay attention and actually do the circuit too that way. I know somebody asked, and that's on my mind too, is how old this individual is. 8. Yeah, so I think fine for an 8-year-old, maybe just finding what their interest is and why, like their motivation to motivate them to stay there, be it maybe like themes or even a skill. Like if they said that they want to learn cartwheels, be like, okay, this is what we need to work on to develop a cartwheel kind of thing. So anybody else have any strategy suggestions dealt with this?
I'm just going to read out the chat too. So like Ashton was sharing, like making sure that you have your sub to give good instructions on how your class usually goes. Don't dress like the kid that was not listening. Just ask.
Or address. Don't address the kid.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Don't address the kid.
Don't address. Yeah.
So like I've had that before too. Like I've had subs before, and there's certain kids that may react a little bit more in the class. So make sure that you it's always good to just give the coaches a heads up, say like, hey, like, this kid might react like this. These are the things that I use to help that child. This is the way that I speak, kind of thing. Like, show me this, like I've got a participant that loves when you praise him, right? Like, show me this thing. Oh, good job. Like those kind of things. So definitely like communicating with your sub, because your class the best. So,
and I think too, to what Tanya was saying, it's important to as well address the behavior in saying that you all not behaving for the first 20 minutes is super disrespectful. I had to be somewhere, and then this sub came in and gave their time to work with all of you, and you're choosing not to listen. That's unacceptable. I expect better from you. Please do better next time. Like if they, depending on the age again too, if they know like what they're doing, then it's like, oh, it's like a sub, I can like goof off and mess around. But again, just setting that precedent, and it could be a learning experience for them. Maybe then for a bit, then for whatever the reward is in their class, they might not get for maybe a few classes or something of the sort like that. Like instead of pit time instead, then, oh, well, maybe we'll take a break from pit time. And then, depends on your strategy. But again, making it about the behavior and not necessarily about the participant himself is important.
Yeah.
If it is super bad, like I would talk to the parents.
Yeah, I like that. I agree with that. Cause like I've had, participants, and I use the trampoline, like you're a group, like you got to work together, let's all listen, kind of thing. Like I'm not gonna reward that one kid that was, or participant that was being unfortunately bad, and then have everybody go on the trampoline, because then that's not teaching them anything. And I know this is like total sidestep, but like when you're addressing kids like I'm sorry, we keep saying participants. When you're addressing participants, like make sure, like you can address them as a group, but make sure like it's appropriate, right? Like I am very against like any bullying in classes. So making sure that everybody knows that like there will be no bullying in the class if you see anything that is happening. So, and then addressing that kid on their own. So that's where I would do like a group thing.
I think the last thing to, I guess, leave to is when these types of behaviors occur, when it comes to discipline, an approach that I try to do, an approach that I do is instead of necessarily punishing them, because I know, let's call it the old style of coaching and thinking, like, oh, you're misbehaving, go do a rope climb. I don't know about all that. I would, if anything, I would take away privileges instead. Instead of them earning a punishment, they're losing a privilege. They're losing something that they enjoy, like going into the pit, like tramp time. Instead, we're just going to do something else, because then it's not going to be necessarily a negative experience per se, but rather like, I didn't earn my privilege. So for all the coaches out there, maybe that's something to think about too, as you're kind of going through your classes and through your instances when you have to deal with stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also just thinking of that scenario about the class with the misbehaving with the sub, just making sure to go over the rules again, like have the sub address the rules, like something that you have within your class just having the sub do them. You as the coach, now you're coming back and talking to them about it, whenever the rules, expectations. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we are kind of already over time. It's 2:05, and I appreciate everyone for being here for today. Tanya, Ashton, and I will hang around for a few minutes following. But I think for everyone else, thank you all so much for taking the time to be here today. And let's just give a quick little applause to Tanya and to Ashton for giving that great presentation. That was wonderful. And I know that with the next presentations we're going to be having, we'll be able to dive more in depth into, I guess, more specific things. But this one was, I guess, to scratch the surface, if you will, in terms of what's to come. So very exciting stuff. If anyone has any other questions, feel free, you can hang out for a bit. And if not, then I think we all hope that you have a great afternoon.
Yes. Thank you guys. Thanks for
Awesome. Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.